Lately, I have been playing a lot with the Eruptor, and I really love this weapon. I've completely leveled it up to 25 so that you guys know this is an authentic review with my impressions. Now, I know this weapon has been getting a lot of praise lately. Not only was the Eruptor flooding my comments section on both of my most popular videos, but I believe it's actually competing with a support weapon you're all familiar with, the Anti-Material Rifle, or AMR. In fact, I was wondering, is the Eruptor better than the AMR? Now, some of you might be scratching your heads because how can a primary be better than a support weapon? But allow me to explain. When I tried this weapon after the series of buffs it received, I noticed it had similar features to the AMR. Now, in-game, you can't really tell how much damage the AMR does, but you can get a feeling based off of encounters. I noticed certain things like taking 2 shots to kill a Hulk in the eye. Both had the same scope, and both were AP4. So to answer this question, I decided to make a series of tests and go on to the Helldivers 2 wiki to ratify my claims. Now, when I first took a look at the wiki, I noticed that the projectile damage was much higher on the AMR than the Eruptor, but this little statistic is a little deceiving. In practice, I knew that the Eruptor had dealt more damage to certain enemies. This is because the explosion damage and the shrapnel damage both stack with projectile damage. The simplest explanation is that the AMR doesn't have either, so the damage, although decent, falls off in comparison. This difference actually gives the Eruptor a huge edge on medium enemies like gunships and devastators. You see, both projectiles are AP4, which means they have heavy armor penetration. So when you take both guns against heavy enemies, they feel a lot closer. But when you target medium enemies, that's when things start to get really interesting. The AMR does 450 damage and 180 durable damage per projectile, while the Eruptor only does 230 damage and 115 durable damage per projectile. However, the Eruptor deals 225 in explosive damage, and its shrapnel deals 110 damage and 35 durable damage, but this extra damage only applies to medium armor or lower, which means the Eruptor has more stacking damage. That was a lot of information. I can sort of understand why Arrowhead hides this stuff in the game. What these stats mean is that the AMR is going to take 2 shots to kill a Devastator, and the Eruptor will take 1. Same is true for gunships. As far as I know, these 2 mobs are the only ones the Eruptor one-shots, but also that the AMR does not. Another thing to know is that the Eruptor's crowd control abilities. Because it's of its explosion, combined with its damage, the Eruptor can clear a crowd with ease, making taking out patrols a piece of cake. Now, the Eruptor may be good, but it still doesn't have everything. You see, the AMR has more ammo, a faster fire rate, but both of their ergonomics felt similar. The AMR has 7 rounds and 6 spare mags, while the Eruptor has 5 rounds and the same amount of spare mags. It's also a nice little fun fact that the Siege Ready passive works on both the AMR and the Eruptor. This is why I started to feel like the Eruptor was better than the AMR. Even though it has some drawbacks like reduced ammo and fire rate, it didn't seem balanced to me that the AMR was so weak in comparison. Now, the AMR is not a bad gun, but I feel like it's a little more deserving of a primary slot now more than the Eruptor. And I can think of a few ways to fix this. Option 1, move the Eruptor into the support weapon category. While this is an option, I think it is a pretty terrible solution. It does make a lot of sense to me, since the Eruptor is pretty solid at everything except close quarters combat. While I am certain players would be upset with this change, including myself, I would understand it. But I still think that the Eruptor would be more valuable even in a support weapon slot. Option 2, make the AMR a primary. Now, I don't like this solution, mainly because I feel like once the AMR is introduced as a primary, no other precision-based primary aside from the Eruptor can compete with it. Why would you take the Diligence or even the Diligence Counter Sniper when you could take the AMR as a primary? Option 3, increase the AMR's spare mags. It's pretty simple. Just increase the AMR's total ammo reserves to 7 to 8 spare mags instead of 6. This would help preserve the AMR's identity as a precision gun and also help it avoid stepping into railgun territory. And while this doesn't make the gun as strong as the Eruptor, it makes it a lot more balanced and allows players to feel free to unload into patrols. Now, before we get into the final point, let me explain something real quick first. Ultimately, this is a sensitive issue, and this is probably the reason why Arrowhead struggled to make the Eruptor feel good in the first place, because they didn't want to ruin the balance for players. Now, why do I care about balance? Isn't this a PvE game? Shouldn't we be focusing on fun? Well, I would like to argue that balance, even in a PvE game, helps to build consistency. And I believe that consistency is much more fun. And my approach to balance may not be what you are currently thinking. Firstly, I really like the bringing up weapons approach. Focusing on weaker weapons first is where I think Arrowhead's priorities should lie. Having a wide loadout variety is much more fun to me than a meta. And metas aren't fun when they are weak. Back in the early days of Helldivers 2, the meta was constantly being nerfed, not because of its effectiveness, but because of everything else's ineffectiveness. Where now, I would argue that the AMR has fallen into ineffective territory. Although not a bad gun, there are just much better options. Now, in comparison to other primaries, I think the Eruptor actually is quite balanced because of its low amount of ammo. You're basically sacrificing good ammo economy for really punchy bullets, and that feels really good. And the way it feels right now feels exactly how I think it should, considering that its direct competitor, the crossbow, used to be able to do all the same things that the Eruptor could, but better. Now, I don't share that same sentiment with the AMR. I feel like the Eruptor does outclass the AMR quite a bit. And yes, the AMR does have a whole bunch of more ammo, and that is definitely helping it stay a support weapon. But I feel like the AMR still needs something to make it feel like its power level is deserving of the support weapon title. And while I think Arrowhead could turn the AMR into a primary, they would probably have to reduce its ammo quite a bit, maybe 5 bullets just like the Eruptor. But then again, if they do that, then why would you take the AMR and not the Eruptor? It just doesn't make a ton of sense. And now for my final suggestion. My suggestion to make the AMR feel more powerful is to make it so that it one-shots Devastators to the chest, specifically the chest, and that you also one-shot gunships whenever you hit their engines. But when you shoot a Hulk's eye, it shouldn't kill it in less than 2 shots. It should still be consistent with what it is right now, because if it kills a Hulk in 1 shot, then you basically have no reason to take anything but the AMR when you are comparing it to the railgun. And that's basically all I have to say on this topic. If you've enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like, and if you want to see more content like this, be sure to subscribe. It helps a ton and it means a lot.